You today.
Good morning, Martin. I'm fine. Baruch Hashem. It's wonderful to be on air with you. A Tuesday taste of Torah would behoove us to move into the third reading of this week's Torah portion, Parshas Miketz, an extraordinary Torah portion by any standard. Here we find Yosef's meteoric rise, taken out of a pit, out of for that matter, a tunnel, where he was held hostage, where he was imprisoned for 12 years, where many others might have lost hope. Yosef never lost hope, and he knew that this day would come, and he is on the same afternoon taken out of prison, and on that same day rises to become the most powerful person in the country, or I should say second most powerful person in the country, the Mishnah Lamelech, the viceroy. And Yosef traverses the land of Egypt. After all, before this he was just a lowly slave, and all he knew was the zip code, or as they say, or the postal code of the house in which he lived. And then he spent 12 years in a pit, in a dungeon, deep in a tunnel, in a catacomb beneath the land. So here Yosef now traverses the land, and he sets into motion the program that he had prepared so that Mitzrayim, so that Egypt would be able to weather the coming famine. And before those years of famine arrived, the Torah takes the time to tell us that not only had Yosef married, but he had children. 2 children, to be exact. Uli Yosef Yulad Shnei Vanim. Yosef begat 2 children, Beterem Tavo Shnat Hara'ov, before the years of famine arrived. Our sages tell us that this is because when there is famine and suffering in the world, it's not an appropriate time for intimacy and family building. But before that happens, Yosef does have 2 children, and we hear about the names of his children, which is really quite fascinating. There are many, many grandchildren born to Yaakov Avinu. They will be named when we hear about the family of Yaakov, and yet here we are told about the reason that Yosef named his children. Vayikra Yosef es Shem HaBechor. Yosef calls his eldest son Menashe. And the reason? Kinoshani Elokim es kol amoli. For God has made me forget all of my travail or toil. Ve'et kol beit avi. He has made me or enabled me to forget the suffering and the loneliness I felt at having been separated from my father's home. The second child is named Ephraim. And the term Ephraim comes from Hifrani Elikim. God has made me fruitful. Be'eretz Ani, in the land of my affliction. The Alshich asks an incredible question about these verses. He says, why would Yosef call his son Menashe, which brings to mind something entirely negative, the forgetting of his father's home? Is a Jew ever permitted to forget where he or she has come from? Is it ever appropriate for us to simply forget the past, or as some have foolishly said, to be unburdened by it? We necessarily bear testament to the past. We carry with us the burden of our history, along with the privilege of the places we have come from, so that we know where we are going. What kind of idea is forgetting your father's home? And what is the Torah telling you and I in this modern era? When we read these verses, after all, the verses of Torah are ever meaningful and relevant. And so the Rebbe suggested that this idea of Yosef forgetting is not to be read literally as in actually forgetting his father's home, but rather it is a commentary on the fact that exile invariably deprives us of our home. It deprives us of our environment, or the place that nurtures our faith and nourishes our growth and spurs us to go on and achieve great things. By depriving us of these natural resources that each and every one of us is gifted, or that each and every one of us receives by virtue of birth, exile places enormous pressure upon us. And the difficulties of these situations that we sometimes face force us to turn inwards, to mine the soil of our soul, and to discover the resources that lie there dormant, things that were never before tapped in tranquil times. Kinoshani elikim es kol hamoli is a powerful statement in which Yosef said, because exile made me forget, because I was overwhelmed and inundated by my challenges, I reached deep inside and I found new strength. I found fresh courage. I found stamina and wherewithal and ability to rise and meet the challenge and to accomplish great things. And at the same time, inasmuch as these negative experiences have forced me to look inward and to find greater strength, at the same time, one must also know that despite the fact that there are many, many negative elements to our exilic reality, and it's no fun to be singled out and seen as different. It's not an easy thing to look at our reality today and laugh at it. You know, Martin, we're having this amazing event for Jewish children on Matzoi Shabbat Kodesh, on Saturday night of Hanukkah. We're renting out the fantasy fair at Woodbine, and we have well over 1,000 children who, Baruch Hashem, B'li Ayin Hara, are already coming, and it's still open. There's still more room, and if other children would like to come, please come and visit us at Chabad Flamingo. And all and every single Jewish child in this great city is invited to come and participate and enjoy a Hanukkah wonderland. And you know what? We have to be concerned about our safety. We have to be concerned about our security. I was in touch with Toronto police multiple times, and people ask questions like, well, what are you doing for security? And my response is, why is that even a question you're asking? Why do I have to be responsible for security? Why do Jewish children need to be watched or guarded more carefully than everybody else? Why do we have to pay a tax to simply live freely in our city? But this is our reality, unfortunately, and there's nothing positive about it. Yet, despite the challenges and the difficulty and the negativity that we Canadian Jews are facing today, we must know that out of these difficulties will come a remarkable flowering. Not only will these difficulties be overcome, not only will we persist and in fact survive, we will ultimately triumph. From Menashe, we move to Ephraim. We will somehow, some way, by the grace of God, be able to see a fruitfulness despite being in an environment that sometimes seems like a land of affliction. I firmly believe, Martin, that we are being given new opportunities to be able to push ourselves to greater heights, opportunities to be able to fortify ourselves with faith and spiritual courage, an opportunity, be'ezrat Hashem, to break out of the limitations of Galut and to be the ones to usher in the most wonderful flowering of the future, the coming of Mashiach in our time. I hope and I pray that this year's Hanukkah will be celebrated like never before, not only around the world, but especially in Eretz Yisrael Hashlema, where together we will hopefully this year on Hanukkah see the menorah glow brightly in its rightful place in the third Beis HaMikdash, bathing the entire world in its illumination and glow. May we merit to see that day of peace. May we merit to experience that flowering of fruitfulness, b'mheira u'b'yameinu, speedily, and in our days. And for this we should all say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Kaplan. And we'll speak again tomorrow.
And thank you all, my friends, for joining. L'chaim.